Assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you all for being here today, especially on a Thursday evening on such short notice. We did put together this panel pretty quickly, but we really could not pass on this opportunity to have this really incredible conversation that we're about to have with Khalid and with Ridwan. And it's a very timely conversation with everything that that's been happening around the world, everything that's been happening, going back to Charlie Hebdo and to what happened in Texas. This is a conversation that needs to be had. And we're going to touch a little bit on new media and social media. And this conversation, we're going to blast it out there to the world. It's going to go beyond this room because everyone really does need to hear about this. And some of you guys, I'm sure, know who our panelists are. But let me introduce first Khalid Al-Bey. Khalid is a Sudanese cartoonist living in Doha, Qatar. His political cartoons rose to fame during the early stages of the Arab Spring in 2011. He used social media to share his cartoons, and he quickly became an artist of the revolution. And he's known both in the Arab world and globally. And he's been profiled in BBC, Al Jazeera, the New York Times, and beyond. And Ridwan Ethami, he is a photographer and filmmaker, born in Queens, New York, and now living in the Washington, D.C. area. He is he's born to Syrian immigrant parents. He has worked in the music and film industry, founding his own visual media company called Ritz Design. I'm sure you guys have heard of that. And he has a passion for storytelling, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about that today. So I'd like to give it to you guys, give the floor to you guys to talk a little bit, just for 3 to 5 minutes, about your journey to where you are now, and what inspired you, and why do you find your artwork to be powerful?
Well, I started out not even thinking about being an artist. I didn't think I had any talent or any skill. So my father said I should go to a school that would allow me to do, computer science or engineering or something else. So I ended up going to a technical school, a technical college that had a fine arts program, and I quickly found out that I didn't want to do the other stuff. So I just stuck to the fine arts and ended up getting a fine arts degree. But it was in that journey to realize that my strength was storytelling. It didn't matter what medium I was using, it was always to tell a story. It was always to tell a bigger picture than if it was a photo, it's a single frame. If it's animation, it's 24 frames a second. If it's a single graphic design piece, it's a single frame that you're telling a story within a frame. If it's a film, it's 24 frames a second, a bunch of seconds in a minute. Minutes make a scene, and then those are shots, and that's filmmaking. And in each of those, you tell a story. And the more effectively you tell a story in a single frame, the more effectively you tell a story within a scene, within a movie, and so on and so forth. So everything for me centered around storytelling, around telling stories that engage people and make people kind of ask questions or question themselves or have those conversations. So it's really interesting to have these conversations like this, because that's exactly the whole reason I got into it. I was in the music industry for a really long time, film industry. Right out of college, I was in a film studio. We did a feature film called My Brother with Vanessa Williams and Tatum O'Neal and a bunch of other people. But that was my film school. My film school was working at that film studio and realizing that you need to be in control of your own narrative to tell that story. And that's when I started hooking up with other Muslim artists and other Muslim musicians and poets and all those things, and kind of realizing that we have that same kind of journey. We're all trying to search for ourselves and try to find our own voice and find our own identity. And through that, you start realizing what you could do with your work to try to help tell our story, whatever our story is. Instead of having somebody else tell our story, it was telling our story. So I hooked up with The Narcissist, who's now a dear friend of mine. We did the video for Alhamdulillah. And that was kind of the beginning of me saying, hey, wait a minute, we can take these tools that we use and kind of redirecting our narrative to be able to tell our story. And then since then, it's just grown and become more of my focus to be able to do that for our people.
Okay, that's fantastic. Okay, and Khalid, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today?
Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I'm very proud to be here, and thank you very much. Moving forward to that was super fast, amazing.
Moving
Yeah.
Moving forward.
which is yeah, something that we're not used to in the Arab world. Definitely, everything's like inshallah. It's gonna happens a month later. But it's kind of similar, very similar story. And for me, it was of course, the parents wanted me to study engineering and all of that, and but I always had a passion for art and comics. And in university, I started drawing cartoons, and it was for the student union. And I didn't like the guy who was running. So I just started doing it, and people liked it, and he hated it, so I thought I was doing a good job. But cartoons were always interesting for me because when we left Sudan, we left in 1989 after the Bashir and Dr. Inqaz came to power. Just like thousands of Sudanese intellectuals and professors and doctors and so on. We went to Doha, and in Doha was, of course, they always tell you to stay away from politics. Good, this is the reason why we're here. So stay away from politics. Don't do anything that has to do with that. Don't even talk about that because in Sudan normally, and in the Arab world, if you talk about politics or just have an opinion in anything really, you're targeted, as a troublemaker, and that could be that could slow down your career, and eventually, it could, if you progress, it could really end your life in a really bad way. But what happened was, my father started bringing these magazines. It's Egyptian political-based cartoons-based magazines. One is called Sabah al-Khair, the other one is called Rose Yusuf. And I was amazed at how creative these guys were. They were talking about certain issues that nobody else was supposed to talk about. We were not supposed to talk about, but they're talking about it in a way that they're not talking about it. And in different ways and in different kinds of drawings, and using all sorts of things, from like stick drawings to oil. I really loved it because it combined the two things that really affects my life: art and politics. And for me, politics was always the reason that I wasn't home. That we left home. That for me was, I really wanted to understand it. I really wanted to talk about it. I really wanted to fix the situation with whatever I have or I can do. So after uni, I started drawing, and I went to a lot of newspapers around the Arab world, Masr, in Egypt, in Sudan, in Doha, Emirates, and I tried to not really work there. I just tried to give them my work, and I was like, please, I don't even want money, so just just put it on the pages. I want to see how it works and all that. I want to learn. And of course, it was always nothing. It was always about censorship, that we have to change this, we have to cut this, we have to do that. And the other thing was, your style is different. And that's even if they give me a second, So the whole thing started with me getting kicked out of an editor's office once, which really upset me. And the editor was, he's very unpleasant, and he was sitting in a huge desk filled with paper, and not even a computer on site, And I was like, how is he working? What is he doing without a computer? I don't understand. But he always was like, this is, he's through the papers, and it's like, you don't even have speech bubbles. How are people supposed to understand? So that hit me, and that was, I think, around like 2009, 2010. And around that time, I think the whole Arab world was trying to do the same thing, because it's just that gap between the people who are in power and the young people who are coming up. And a huge percentage of the Arab world is young, unemployed people, right? So we all had no escape but the internet, right? So I just started my Facebook page, and I just started putting my work on there. And the Arab Spring happened at the same time. So everything it went from having 20 people on there who were my friends to thousands of people from everywhere. And the work started getting shared with a lot of people around the Arab world and with the revolution, activists from the revolution. We all started talking to each other. We all started working together, with Narsi, of course, and Omar, and Omar Efendim was another rapper. And a lot of other creatives, Tanzir in Egypt. It really blew up. And I found myself in the middle of this circle of activists and artists and musicians and you name it, bloggers that are trying to do something different. I had no other means. And just things started happening. And the main thing is that we all understand that, the world, news, art, it all goes through fashion, right? So right now, we all know that we're in fashion, like the Arab Spring is in fashion, the activism, So we are all pushing to get as much attention, as much information out to this side of the world as possible from our voices, right? Our stories, not told by them, told by us, as possible.
Right.
So, I started pushing really hard on social media, just collaborating with a lot of people, collaborating with a lot of artists, and I just, I got good shows in a lot of countries. And maybe in 2011, the end of 2011, starting 2012, I actually met cartoonists, because I never met cartoonists before in my life, ever. Like, I didn't know any other cartoonists. And before that, I had, I didn't call myself a cartoonist. I didn't call myself an artist because I didn't even know.
You had no one to look up to.
Yeah. So I was like, am I an artist? I'm just doing something I like. I really don't know.
So do you think social media is what provided you with that confidence in yourself to call yourself a cartoonist? And you just felt like you were surrounded by a community of other artists and people who just understood the work that you were doing?
Yeah, and it's the appreciation that happened and the feeling that I'm actually doing something right, and people are appreciating it. I'm meeting a lot of people that are like-minded. We're doing the same thing. We think exactly the same way. And at that point, it's not about money, and it's not about fame. It's not about any of that. It's not about I gotta get a show, I gotta sell this. It's not really about that. It's about what's going on and seizing that moment to tell a story. So all my work was always free online under Creative Commons license, and that's a big part of it. That's why it was shared. So yeah, social media is the reason why I'm sitting with you right now, definitely.
Yeah, we're going to touch on that a little bit later, so I'll come back to that conversation. But you actually mentioned a really important point. You mentioned that you come from a background, obviously your Sudanese background, and we're all used to our parents telling us that you should stay away from politics because we come from countries where there are oppressive regimes and you shouldn't speak out because something bad will happen. And I wanted to actually Rizwan, your parents they're Syrian immigrants. How did politics impact your life? I know you're humanitarian and you use photography to tell the stories about the most vulnerable communities in the world. But how does politics play a role into how you tell stories through film and photography?
It's really funny. My father was a diplomat for the Syrian government.
Wow.
And he left the government in 1985, actually. And he couldn't go back until 1998 because he's a defector, considered a defector. And a lot of my uncles weren't allowed to go back to Syria. So it played a part without even me knowing it played a part because it was always there. There was always that underlying, you think about it, but you don't think about it because it's there. So it affected, we would go to Syria, but my father couldn't go with us. And you don't really wonder why when you're a little kid, but as you get older, you start realizing why and what the situation that caused that. And then the generation I grew up in the 90s with was really revolutionary hip hop artists, like Immortal Technique, Hassan Salom, Rebel Diaz, all those guys were my friends. That's who I grew up with. So it was all about the revolution. It was about the revolution before Arabs. It was when Arabs were comfortable. I was about the revolution when Arabs were just chilling still.
Still
So
chilling.
yeah, like
A lot of us are still
yeah, a lot of
chilling.
them still chilling.
Yeah.
So I didn't associate with Arabs actually. I didn't associate with Arabs or Arab politics because I knew I didn't feel like that was me, and I felt like it didn't relate to me because it was so fake and so distant. And what we were growing up with was American politics and American, activism.
Right.
Was what drove a lot of that stuff. And then it was Muslim activism in the US after 9/11 and all that. Then that started playing a role in my work. Like, no, we're here and we don't really care and that kind of thing. So that started taking a part in the activism role. And to say, and then I would do, then the Palestine situation, which is a never-ending situation, would always bring itself up. And then that was revolution, and then all my Latino and Black and other minority artists and friends all relate to the Palestinian movement. So I was always accepted as one of them because I'm Arab and it's the same, we're all the same.
It's the same struggle.
Yeah, it's the same struggle. So for me, that's where my basis for all of that came from. So it would never be anything other than that for me. And I grew up in the 90s with hip hop and that struggle. So that was the basis for my artwork, was always about the struggle and trying to that voice that's fighting to get out there, or those people that have a message that's difficult for people to listen to, or that don't want to hear it and they kind of, want to push it down. So for me, that was always the underlying, basis for the work to say, no, these are important things that we need to talk about. So let me make artwork that may have people have a conversation about it.
And what is your message? You said that, there's a message you want to give. And I actually want to ask you the same question. You both are storytellers. So what is your message to the world?
I'll let you go while I think
It's a
about
really easy question.
For me, it's just it's the same story.
Right.
So for me, it's reflecting what's happening in the region, and just educate. So whenever I do a cartoon, I try to always attach an article about it or whatever. And because I work on social media, it's really hard to get people's attention. So you have to do something that's
It stands out because everyone's competing for attention.
exactly. So and attention span is just getting
Shorter.
shorter and shorter. Like it used to be bloggers and people used to write like long essays and stuff, and then it became Facebook and it was family pictures and statuses, and then it became Twitter. It was 47 characters, and then it became Instagram. Nobody even wants to hear what you have to say. So it became very visual. So it's harder and harder to tell people about what's happening or what do I think of something, or just to start a conversation. So my message is just to tell our side of the story. Because we grew up listening to the same music, right, as people here in the West or in Europe or whatever. Watching the same shows, trying to dress the same. It was like this hip hop culture even over there.
Right.
And even the graffiti scene was just basically copying what's happening over here. So it was for me. It was time to have our own voice, right? To tell the world that we exist, and because they don't know that we exist, right? They're the only thing that the West knows about us is what Hollywood tells them, is what CNN tells them, is what Fox News tells them, and so on. So when Al Jazeera came out, it was amazing for us, And when Al Jazeera English came out, that was even
It reached a wider audience.
Exactly, like it was wider reach and all of that. So it's really about that. It's really about just showing that we're all the same, right? We all grew up. That's why I use a lot of pop culture.
Yeah, I saw your
cartoons.
Kardashian.
Yeah, Obama one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So I try to use a lot of that just to say that we live in the same world. We're absolutely the same. Even I'm talking right now. It's like I feel like we know the same people. We live the same way. My father was a diplomat. We left because of the same thing.
Wow.
So it's there's you know, the problems that we suffer as our generation, I think, you know. But the problem is that the issue is that we couldn't talk. You could, right? You had the chance to be creative. You met a lot of creative people that could be creative. We couldn't do that, you know. You can't do that at all, right? Because you're putting yourself in danger. You're putting your family in danger. People just show up, and you know, it was a stress to be creative, and it was a stress to be different, and it was definitely dangerous to talk about politics in any sort of way or form. You know, like don't do that.
We'll come back to you about that, about, you know, how you were able to get over that, you know, mental block to be able to be as courageous as you are to actually speak about it. So you want to tell us about your message?
It's very short. It's truth. And beyond truth, because it's hard to get to truth, it's the search for truth. Because it's that never-ending search for truth. So whatever that truth is, we may not know what it is, but it's that you're searching for it. Whatever, in whatever our ways, what is true, you know, what is true for me may not be true for you, but then together we have to figure out what is true for us and where do we get to it. So it's always the search for truth. You know, do you believe politicians? Do you believe what they're saying, the lies that they're telling you? Do you believe what media is telling you? Do you believe what your friends are telling you? Do you believe what your parents are telling you? Do you believe what history has told you? So that search for truth. And then, do you believe who you are based on what somebody else is telling you? That search for truth. So for me, it's always searching that truth. And we may never find it, but it's knowing that, always trying to find that, and then being true to yourself in that same journey.
Exactly. To always ask questions, not just believe exactly what you're told.
Exactly.
Now I kind of want to switch gears a little bit to go more into the topic of freedom of speech. I talked a little bit in the beginning about, you know, Charlie Hebdo, and recently on Sunday there was the attack in Texas, and the topic again, you know, about freedom of speech has come front and center once again, except this time is actually a little bit different. This time people are not, you know, so quick to call, you know, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but so the whole situation was that there was a Draw the Prophet Muhammad cartoon contest. And, you know, this was happening, and now the conversation is, you know, where do you draw the line between freedom of speech and hate speech? You know, if people say there's a fine line there, and I want to hear you guys' I want to hear your thoughts on that. Where is that line? And, you know, I want to talk a little bit about censorship and self-censorship and government censorship.
You want to go?
Let's go first.
Sure. I mean, for me, interestingly enough, like as a Muslim, you have rules that kind of govern your life, and that dictate what you can and can't do, and what you should and shouldn't do. So that always kind of guided my quote unquote freedom, because if it was, and not necessarily who somebody else said what Islam was, it was, again, that search for truth, to be like, what is true Islam? So I remember doing a photo shoot with a Muslim artist, and he was like, and he was really conservative artist, and he was like, I don't know if my fan base is gonna like this. Like, I said, why? Show me something that's wrong in this. He said, I don't know, it's just a little out there. And he was like, you're right, there's nothing. I was like, it's crazy, it's halal crazy. Like, it's crazy halal. Like, what do you want? There's nothing in here that you could, it may be not the norm, but there's nothing in here that you could say is wrong, or that you would be opposed to. Is it because you have swagger? Is it because you have energy? Is it because there's power in it? Is that wrong? Is that what you hold back? No. Our values tell us X, Y, Z, if you adhere to those values, and that you could still do everything else. You know what I mean? Islam isn't about what you can't do, it's about knowing what you can do, and then the sky's the limit. So with that, it kind of, you have the freedom. You know the freedom to insult someone is wrong. Like, you can say something, but you can hurt somebody's feelings. It doesn't make it right. You can say something that is kind of offensive to somebody, but that wouldn't mean it's right, just because you have the right to do that. And I mean, I grew up in America and I was born in America, so we always had freedom of thought and freedom of to be able to say what you wanted. But it's illegal to yell fire in a crowded theater. So you yell fire in a crowded theater, freedom of speech gets canceled because you're endangering people. So you take all those things into consideration. You take your upbringing, your background, your religious kind of mindset, your freedom mindset, and in common sense and logic.
Mm-hmm.
You say, if I'm going to do something and it's going to offend people, sometimes it might be okay if you're trying to.
Mm-hmm.
But if you adhere to your morals, and everybody has their standards, and people have different standards, so I can't expect another artist to adhere to my standards. I just know what I have to adhere to my standards, and and the lane that I stay in, and how I structure my work. That's all I know. I can't be held accountable for somebody else's thought process or what their definition of freedom is.
Mm-hmm.
That's them. And being in America, it's okay for them to have that, and you know that. The fact that I can say something has the same value as anybody saying it something else. So anything else. If you don't agree with it, the freedom of speech is to be okay to not agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so for people that, like the Draw of the Prophet Muhammad contest, the greatest counter that I saw, I don't know if people saw this, was the Draw Muhammad contest, and it was just people drawing their friends who were named Muhammad, and they were just drawing them. And that was brilliant. That was like, that's what you're supposed to, that's how you counter it. That's how you counter it. You say, you know what, you have a right to say that, I'll draw Muhammad too.
And you know what's fantastic about that? I saw that all over. Time magazine picked it up. The story no longer was focusing on the actual contest itself, but about the people who were countering that. So I think that was incredible. Do you also want to share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, for me as a cartoonist, it's and living in the Middle East. Again, being a Muslim, right? We have a lot of values, and there's a lot of things you don't say, a lot of things you don't do, a lot of things. Haram, whatever. Like not only because it's haram, because it's aib. You don't say that. And growing up with a lot of censorship, right? So people are not used to seeing anything that's outside the box, right? Or outside the norm, really. Like, because newspapers are censored, films are censored, books are censored, everything is censored, right? So when you come out and you do something, I'm talking about myself, right? If I do something, I keep trying to push it every time, not because of anything, but I just want to see where I can get and how people will accept it, right? Because now things are better, with the internet and with satellite and all of that. So, but still, like when you want to talk about, I talk about whatever I want to talk about. I talk about religion, I talk about this, everything, right? But whatever I talk about, I try to talk about it in a smart way, a way that will interest people in what I'm talking about. Because this is my message. My message is to interest people in what I'm talking about, for them to later, discuss and agree or not agree, or we can all discuss together, whatever. This is my message. My message is not you're wrong and I'm right because I'm better, I'm smarter, obviously. No, it's because this is what I think. I could be 100% wrong. Let's talk about it, right? So the problem is, again, and I go back to the West doesn't really understand us because they don't speak our language, we speak their language. They don't watch our TV, we watch their TV. So we're kind of like stalking them without them knowing, right? So we actually know what they think about us. It's like you're listening to somebody gossiping about you while you're there. You're like, really, this is what you think about me, man? It's like, I thought we're, So it's like you see a movie or something, and you see like, the Arab guy is not even Arab, and he's dressed like in a weird way, and like,
Must be really awkward.
what's going on, right? Yeah, it's like, why do you think like this, right? So, the cartoonists are lazy, right? What they're doing is just feeding into that stereotype of the Arab person is a guy with a beard who is angry, right? Hairy dude, right? A niqabi woman is a woman who is oppressed, right? It's just really lazy without really going into understanding the problems, because they have deadlines and they work for a party. They're all like they have to reflect their newspapers' ideologies,
Yeah.
right? So because of that, these things happen because it's lazy cartooning basically, right? And for them, it became like, what do you mean I can't draw the prophet? I want to draw the prophet. I'll draw the prophet. I want to draw the prophet. So for them, it's not about why are people angry, what got people here. It's about me
And your rights.
and my rights. It's absolutely selfish, right? Of not even knowing the problem or where this came from, right? It's about, no, it's my right and I want to practice it. I want to do it. He doesn't care if he's upsetting 1.6 billion people. He does not care. He is losing 1.6 billion people. He's losing them. These people are not going to listen to him. His message, nothing, right? Because it's my right to do so, right? If I want to do this, I'll do it. Great, do it. But what are you gaining? How are you ever fixing the situation that you're in right now? Especially in France, right? Where the Muslim, Arab, African minorities are living in ghettos. They're not even integrated in society. Nothing, right? I know a guy he's a graffiti artist, right? And now he's doing good and everything. And hanging out with white people in galleries, everything, right? So he's like, the first time I met a white French person was after I graduated from university. Do you imagine that? He's like, I lived all my life with black and other Arabs.
It's unbelievable.
And everybody's Muslim, right? And they lived in Marseille, right? So this is the problem. This is where this comes from, right? And it's just of like, why I don't understand why are you doing it? I really don't understand why they're like, this is the only thing that these people have, right? So for a lot of people, it's like, yeah, and the countries and they, of course, they blame the whole religion, right? Even though like 3 people did that attack, they blame 1.6 billion people who saw these cartoons and didn't do anything for 10 years. No, everybody gets blamed. The whole religion gets blamed, and we have to defend ourselves. We have to apologize for everyone, right? They don't understand that there's 1.6 billion people who are upset. But they did give you your freedom of speech. Nobody did anything. Everybody came up with like counter ideas and all of that, right? But 3 people made that attack, so it's all about these 3 people now. And it's just very, very, very selfish, right? I mean, the world is already in trouble. There's a lot of things happening. Do you rather build a bridge or just widen the gap? What do you rather do? It all comes back to you as a person. It's your right to do it? Yeah, it's great. It's your right to do it. But what are you doing? How are you ever helping the situation?
Right.
And for the thing in Texas, I from the name, the anti-Islamization of America.
Yeah, it's actually designated as a hate group. Yeah.
I mean, how do you feel about that as a Muslim American? Let me ask you a question. I mean, the anti-Islamization of America.
I mean, how do I feel about the group in general?
The name, doesn't that hurt you as an American? Like the anti-Islamization of America? I mean,
yeah, I think it's offensive, definitely, but I think the fact that, people know it's not a legitimate group in this country. No one takes it seriously. No one takes the leadership in this organization seriously. Turn on the news right now. People are questioning this group. And, they're designated as a hate group, so I don't take them very seriously, honestly. Yeah. I want to switch the conversation up a little bit before we break for prayer, but you get your share of, I'm sure, hate. People always question, why are you pushing the envelope so far with your cartoons? And how do you deal with this? How do you respond to people when they tell you pushed it too far this time? You need to stop.
My mom tells me that all the time. I don't know. The thing is, and I think it's why my cartoons get shared, and it's because I try to talk about things that people don't talk about, right? And it's hard to do that, especially in a very censored society like we live in, right? So I try to do things differently. I try to, see what without really hurting anyone's feelings or whatever, just like talk about certain issues in certain ways. It might hurt a lot of, some people, right? But again, it's open for discussion, right? And if you go to my Facebook page, it's always the same thing, like people talk to each other, people hate it, people love it, they all swear at me. Later on, these people might even become friends, right? The people who are actually discussing this issue and hating each other, later on, it becomes a relationship. Like they talk to each other. And this is exactly what I want. I want these people to talk to each other, right? And we can all discuss if this is good or bad or, whatever. And this is what I push the envelope for. It's for, and I don't think I really do, anything crazy, but it's just something that's different. Maybe you didn't see it before. Maybe you didn't see it from an Arab artist before. Maybe you didn't see it from a Sudani artist before. So it's that, right? And again, working in social media, you have to. There's a lot of junk in the internet. So for you to stand out, you really have to be doing something, extra.
Provocative.
Yeah, or like grab somebody's attention, right? So this is it.
And last question before we break is for Ridwan. And you just recently got back from Nepal. And before that, you traveled throughout the Middle East and other regions of the world. And you spent time in refugee camps. I'm just curious to know how have you seen artwork being used, in these refugee camps? How have you seen, these people who are living, in obviously not so great conditions? How have you seen them use artwork and other methods to express themselves and their struggles?
So what's really interesting is in Jordan, in Palestinian refugee camps that have been established since 1968. So the kids who are there aren't even first generation Jordanians, they're second generation, third generation Jordanians, who are essentially Jordanians, like we would be Americans, but all their graffiti is like Palestine, pro-Palestine, Nakba, we're going back to like free Palestine, Palestinian flags. So then when you ask them, are you Palestinian or Jordanian, you'd be like, I'm a Palestinian born in Jordan, just like I would say I'm a Syrian born in America. Yeah. So it's funny to see, and it's funny, the graffiti's almost been the language of struggle everywhere. So if you go to these Palestinian camps in Jordan, it's all Palestine graffiti and peace signs and what's that little character with the hands behind the yeah, alhamdulillah. And then in Palestine, it's the same kind of thing. It's graffiti that all relates to freedom and freedom fighting and revolution. So they've used that as a language, that art form as a language to kind of get their point across and to get their hopes across, which is always interesting to see it in different places, kind of echoing similar things to what we had in New York City growing up. So it's ironic to see the same tool or the same visual language being used by different people for their voice, to get their voice out.
It's very cool.
In a good way. I wouldn't assume it's good. It just, yeah, the comments and stuff, you get the usual stuff around. Yeah. Agitated electronics and
Colors.
Yeah, colors. And, but yeah, just, threats or, why don't you come to Sudan and say this? Like the usual stuff.
Yeah, but nothing direct.
That is very direct.
Like from official.
From the government,
yeah, like official someone like who says I'm, with the government, like. Because now I see that they're kind of attempting, to work with youth and kind of say, oh, we're having this kind of get together, come talk with us.
I don't think they'll invite me to that, man.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not sure.
I ask us, sometimes they do that to convert you to become part of their deal.
Yeah. You know what? It's if they do invite me, I will go. I will go. Yeah, it'll be nice. It'll be nice to see other people there. Right. To see the way they think. If they're still positive after ruining the country for 25 years and just absolutely ruining it, I don't know what they're positive about. If I really want to go and
see what they're positive about.
And see what they-
Yeah, I just called them out right there, you know, like.
You want to see what inside the prisons look like. So. So that's what
This part's off the record. Okay, you want to ask a question?
When did you like start being a cartoonist? And like, how did you persuade your parents?
I was always a cartoonist. But you heard of me now, but I was always trying to do it.
Okay.
You know, so it's I called myself a cartoonist in 2011 when I came out, and I thought that okay, now I think I earned it, right? But I always felt inside, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to be an artist. I want to be an artist. My parents were not very happy, and it's not because but it's because of the dangers that comes with it. You know, anybody that states their opinion is in danger. And it's not only cartoonists, journalists,
Media.
anybody whatsoever, bloggers. Even if you write a tweet,
Like being biased, like towards them.
yeah. If you have an opinion against, the general opinion, you're in trouble, definitely. Like, and later they got used to it. So, yeah. So you just need to be good. If you're good, people will respect that. But just not, yeah, your content has to be alright.
I always thought it was interesting how, you always felt like you were a cartoonist and you tried to, you reached out to all these media outlets and, you wanted to pursue it and they kept on just like shooting you down, telling you, I don't know, like you're not good enough or you just don't want to publish, this is too controversial. And then, you just post it on social media and all of a sudden you get all these fans and all these people who believe in you. So I think that shows you the power of social media that, even if sometimes you don't believe in yourself or your community doesn't, there's a world out there of people who are willing to help you and, help take you to the next level.
Definitely. And it's all about doing what you like, really.
Yeah.
Just do it. Literally, just do it. Whatever you think you're good at, just do it. And if you're good, good things will happen.
You want to go ahead?
Hi, my name is Azaz. Hi, Khaled. I have a question. I always wanted to ask you this question, maybe because we share the same background, living in the Gulf, Shahada Arabi. Do you think you became more sensitive to the regional issues because you lived in that setup? Do you think if you lived in Sudan, you would have been more local? Do you think like living in Qatar made you more sensitive to the regional issues?
Definitely. Because we're exposed to everything and everyone, Yani, in class I had people from everywhere, I know the name of everybody's president, the jokes about the Palestinians, the jokes about the Jordanians, the jokes about, so you know the culture of everybody else, and that gives you quite good information. Yani about every culture and what's sensitive and how to say it and how to say it and what to say. But it definitely made a difference. If I was in Sudan, I don't even know if I would have really pursued it that hard to be an artist. Because at the end of the day, yani luckily I have a job. It's still in arts. Yani I work in arts and culture. I work in a museum, so I can actually do this. Most people in Sudan are just trying to get by, right? And they don't have the means, they don't have the time, they don't have. But but I'm trying to do things. I hope that I'm speaking for them. Continue. And I hope that they see it, and there's a lot of talented people. They see it and they do the same. But it's all about that. And a lot of people, I get all these negative comments on it sometimes, a lot of times. This is not good, or this is not funny, or that, whatever, anybody could do better than that. Good, do it. This is what I want. I want other people to step in and do better. Relax, this is good for me. I want to be proud. I want to be proud of Sudanese artists, like a Salahi, like
A lot of them. Yeah. So I wanna see young Sudanese artists coming up and doing things.
Well, you're doing great. I like how you're more global in your like prospect. You're not very local, and I think like you speak of a lot of things, a language that I can understand. I cannot speak for Sudanese people who live in Sudan, but as a Sudanese diaspora who lived in the Gulf or more of a global person, you kind of touch on things that I believe in that are not necessarily very local in Sudanese sense, especially the human rights issues and stuff like that. I feel like you're more free in expression and more like bird view, not too much of a fish view of like what's happening.
Because I work in current events, yeah. I try to as much as I can to work in current events. So I of course, yeah, Sudan is special, but I treat Sudan also in a way that I want the people outside to know what's going on in Sudan. This is the main news in Sudan right now. This is what's happening. And a lot of times it's really interesting when I meet people that follow my page or follow me or whatever and film my cartoon. And they're like, oh, so this is happening in Sudan. And they knew it from my cartoon, you know. So I'm like, yeah, you know, this is good. But they know about us now, yeah. Not only through me, yeah, but they know that what the insides feel like, what people really think or whatever, you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I go to you, I actually want to go to Ridwan. I want you to talk a little bit about Nepal. I mean, there's this horrible earthquake in Nepal, and you got to go see this firsthand. Can you tell us, what's it like, and share maybe a story or two about what you heard from the people there?
It's really interesting. You don't know what to expect. I don't know if people expect complete and utter destruction as soon as you land on the airplane. Like everything is destroyed. I think that's what people expect. I know I expected some of that, but then you land and it's not. It's not everything. It's not complete utter destruction, and it's almost like a war zone, more so where things are destroyed. So you'll go down the street and you'll be like, "This is normal. What's going on?" And then you'll turn the corner and that whole block is gone. And then it'll be like 10 buildings that are okay, and then one that's completely devastated. And then we drive out to the villages and they'd be wiped out. So it was almost like, there was one block that I saw that reminded me of those old World War II photos where you see like Germany where like the buildings are all blown out and the sidewalks are all just filled with bricks. That's what it looked like. But then you turn the corner and be okay. And you're like, well, this doesn't make any sense. But one sense that
this was Sudan looks like, bro.
Yeah.
Bricks everywhere.
Yeah.
The next turn is a castle.
You're like, and I was like, some of it, you're like, the country's really, really poor. Nepal is really, really poor. So some of it, you're like, this is messed up, and I don't think the earthquake did this. Like, so you're going, I don't think these messed up streets or blocks have anything to do with the earthquake. I think this is just what they were living in. So then when you start meeting the people and you start like seeing them in their situation, and they're really strong about it. Like you think us, like when our Wi-Fi gets cut off, we lose our minds. Like dude's house is like in a pile, and he's just shoveling it, and you're like, "Is this your house?" He's like, "Yeah, right here," and he's just shoveling it, and they're totally okay with it. They were really good Muslims about it, even though they're all Buddhist. You know, like if you would think about like taqwa or having that faith, that one story that I have is a photo I actually posted up the other day, where a dude's wearing a shirt and it says, "Allah will find a way when there is no way." And I asked him, I said, "Are you Muslim?" He said, "No." And I said, "Do you speak English?" He goes, "No." And I said, "Do you know what your shirt says?" And he goes, "No." And he's standing in front of the building that's just been destroyed, and that summed up the experience.
Wow.
That summed it all up. Like the fact that he doesn't even know what it says, but that's what it felt like. That they almost believed that. He believed that without even knowing what it said. Yeah. He's like, "I like the design on it." And that was crazy. That was crazy.
You have a picture, right?
Yeah, dude,
okay,
I posted that up. So.
Yeah.
But you have to tell that story, though.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have to wrap up soon, but let's take a couple more questions. But let's do it quickly. So I cut you off, so you should go
Okay,
first.
I just had a question for Ridwan, like going and seeing all these places, whether it's like refugee camp or like some place that's been destroyed, how does that affect you as a person who's trying to give these people a voice?
it messes me up. But what it is you try to not get messed up by it. You try to remember that you're doing something with a silly little tool like a camera that our parents have told us for so many years, not my parents, but so many parents have told us that this is a pointless tool. This art isn't something that you can do good with, and that I'm doing good, or I'm telling these people stories because they can't. So it's like my duty to take their stories and share it to the world so that somebody can feel something and do help, or donate money, or go there and help. Be it in Palestine, be it in any of the countries, be it in Sudan, be it in Somalia, be it in any of the countries I've been in, to be like, okay, I want to help, or I want to do something, or I want to spread the story of these people, the same like I want to spread our story.
Okay, you want to go?
Yeah, quick question. I know you guys in, like art, media in general, you have a huge responsibility on your shoulders to sort of, give the right message. Is there anything in your creative process that sort of gives you like a compass that says, okay, I don't want to cross the line, because you see a lot of people, out there, a lot of work that's very, very polarizing. It really doesn't help the message. Is there something, an internal compass in your work that says, okay, no, I've crossed the line here, let me backtrack, and let me just reframe my work in a different way? Does that factor into your process? Do you think like that, or is it completely uninhibited?
For me, yes, definitely. Because my medium, in cartoons, there is a very thin line between trying to say what you want or what you think and being a propagandist.
Right.
And I face that a lot, especially because I live in Qatar. So whatever I say is like that's always like the first comeback. Oh, Qatariyin got lake, man. So it's always like, oh, this is how much they're paying you. But it's always about that. So you need to think about asking a question, not stating this is the right thing. This is what's happening. Like, you ask a question. You put something out for discussion. You just say, this is what I think. What do you think? Right? So it's about that. And of course, we spoke about this earlier. I mean, for me personally, I try to when I do something. Of course, there's self-censorship, first of all, because of our society, because of our religion, whatever. You think about, is this acceptable or not, right? And the measure for me is always like, how do I feel if my mom saw this? Right. Because, I have, social media is very open, so, there's everybody on Facebook now. Everybody's mother is on Facebook, and everybody's younger sister is on Instagram, right? So, yeah, exactly. So you just have to think about this. Right? You have to sum up the message in a way that everybody will kind of accept and think about, and at the same time be creative in telling this, and at the same time try to say something that will start a conversation. So it's a million things. There's I can remember that once I got an idea and that was the final outcome of it. So you keep sketching, I keep working on it until it comes. An idea could take me 5 minutes, or it could take me months. I leave it and I leave it, until it's like I feel like this is the right thing to say. Then I do it.
Texas post probably took 5 minutes because you posted it like hours after it happened.
Yeah.
You just had to get that one up.
So I have a question about maybe your aspirations as artists. Are there one or two things, or I'm sure maybe you have many more, but that if you were able to accomplish in terms of delivering that message that you have asked about earlier, that would leave you totally satisfied or feel really accomplished as artists in delivering your messages?
For me, nothing will leave me satisfied, because it's always the next thing, and keep pushing. I definitely, for me, but something that would make me happy as the next step is a feature film for me. A feature film about us, written by us, directed by us, told by us, about us, that isn't corny. and isn't watered down and doesn't like kind of soft foot around the situation and be like, this is who we are. No, keep it real and keep it true to who we are, and then have that, you know, stand on its own and not be apologetic or anything like that. So that's my next thing, if I were to think about it.
All right, so unfortunately, we're gonna have to stop right here. Feel free to ask questions, but we have to head out, unfortunately. So thank you all for being here today. This was a really incredible conversation. Thank you so much.